Hi there, I'm back after my break for surgery and lots to talk about, and Keir Starmer and the Labour government have given me something juicy to get my teeth into, and that is their plans to bring us closer to Europe, more specifically what's called dynamic alignment. If you're not aware of what this is, then essentially as Brussels either changes or adds new rules in specific areas, we, Britain, take those rules and incorporate them ourselves with no discussion, no parliamentary vote, no putting it to the people. We just take those rules. If this sounds similar to what a customs agreement would look like if we were joining the EU, then there are definitely similarities. The main difference being is that it only applies to very specific areas. So why is this happening, and what does it actually mean? So it is Keir Starmer's Labour Party's belief, publicly stated, that the EU and the UK need to work closely together, both for UK's economic and defence interests. Perfectly acceptable statement to make, and accurate as far as it goes. However, it's been decided, and this isn't Brexit scaremongering, this is published in the EU-UK summit from May last year, that the UK and the EU in principle will dynamically align rules to allow for smoother trade, so less trade barriers for those products concerned. And they're starting with essentially food and agricultural products. Now, if you recall back to 2016 and the Brexit vote and all the drama that surrounded it, and just to remind you, this was the single biggest democratic exercise in this country's history. We voted by a narrow margin to leave the EU, and that vote was essentially about control. It was about sovereignty. Who controls our borders, who controls our trade, who controls our rules, and who controls our laws. And here we are with the Labour government very slowly, salami style, giving that sovereignty away to Brussels. And the mechanism for this will be in a piece of legislation that I would wager that 99.999% of the country have never heard of, which is the Product Safety and Metrology Act. And within this act, it contains secondary legislation, which means that the government can accept these changes and even, I believe, add to them without having any vote in Parliament. Just to make it clear, none of this was in the Labour manifesto when they came to power in, what was it, a year and a half ago now. It's not been put to the public for a vote, and Labour are keeping very, very quiet about the details. Again, you may not realise it, but there was a committee in Parliament that scrutinised EU relations. The government got rid of it, which annoyed both Brexiteers and Remainers. And so we have a position where this government is very quietly planning to give away sovereignty to the EU on a relatively narrow range of products for now. One quick thing, Harley here, say hello Harley, has a quick request. Would you mind hitting the like button and maybe subscribing? Most people who watch these videos don't, and it really, really helps. Okay, that's it, back to the video. Why does this matter? Well, like I said, Brexit was about sovereignty, and no government, irrespective of whether or not you've had a vote Brexit-like, should be giving away sovereignty to another nation without having a meaningful vote and debate and discussion about it. And this raises a wider issue I have with politics in general, but this government and the left progressives specifically, and I'm trying my best not to be party political about this, and that is a disdain for democracy and voters if they think they're in the right. So if you think that closer alignment with the EU is the right thing and that should happen irrespective, then why would you put it to the voters just in case they don't agree with you? And that seems to be what's happening here. Now, Keir Starmer said all along, we're not going to rejoin the EU, we're not going to have a customs union, and I believe him, for now. However, if you salami slice one product, one sector at a time, and add it to this kind of arrangement, it doesn't take too long before you have something that looks very similar to a customs agreement. And if it walks like a duck, swims like a duck, quacks like a duck, it's a duck. And all of that would happen without any vote. Now, if you are a fan of the EU, if you think Brexit was a massive mistake, if you think having a customs union or even rejoining is the right thing to do, you may be celebrating this. I would urge you to think again, not because there may not be an economic upside, and I'm happy to admit there may be an economic upside, but if a government, any government, is willing to bypass democracy in this way for something you agree with, what are you going to do when they do it to something you don't agree with? There's an important principle here that frankly is more important than a minor economic upside. There are lots of things we could do in this country that would have an economic upside, but we wouldn't do them without debate and a parliamentary vote, or putting in a manifesto in time for a general election and then enacting it after we'd won. So no, this is a very, very dangerous activity, and one which I urge you to write to your MP to complain about. I'll leave you with one last thought on this issue. As this becomes more and more likely, as this bill, the one I referred to, the Product Safety Metrology Bill, passes through Parliament, the one winner from this is going to be the Reform Party. Nigel Farage is going to make hay about this, and that 50% of the voters, just over 50% who voted to leave the EU, only about half of which currently say they'd vote for reform, a lot of those are going to jump to reform. So if you don't want reform to be the next government, then you should be doing all you can to stop this bill, because it will be a rallying cry and a recruitment drive for Nigel Farage and reform. Obviously, if you're happy with that, fill your boots. Ta-ra.